There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go.
That was like my future move at Cincinnati. I was like, I don't know what every day. So you gotta get the basics. I'm actually not kidding, but I have
Well,
Hey, can you hear me?
yes. How are you guys?
Oh, oh,
Hello.
Hey, Sarah.
How's it going?
Hey, can you guys hear us?
What?
Oh, yeah. Um, here. There's some of up here, and then some of this up here. Uh, okay. There we go. Can everyone who's currently on the call hear me right now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like ASMR crisp, and 1 being WTF is this, where does my voice sound right now?
2.
Something
two.
between 3 and 4.
It's between 3 and 4. Okay. Is 3 and 4 the case for everyone else?
I don't think so. I can barely hear you.
You're breaking a
Your
lot.
voice is, yeah, your voice is breaking.
Because you know what? Instead, here, let's put it on.
Oh, transition. Yeah. Do you want this one? Or leave it? Okay.
You must have had 10 minutes experience like a piece of wire, like maybe like the light
know,
put in and
absolutely. So the big shift is in the space and follow the and with a passion for doing it. So if you didn't have the hub spot, maybe you get like 5 feet and also you could have to do that.
how does this sound? Much better?
It's still
Worse.
gravelly, but better. Yeah.
Sorry, one more time?
No, it is worse than before.
This
No, I can't hear you at all.
how about 2, 3? No, no part?
Crazy.
No. Okay. What do we do here? You know what? We'll
Audio, right? Always interesting.
I'm not really feeling confident myself in one area. Just overall, people just be grateful that you did it.
it's a pivot.
Yeah,
right.
they'll appreciate the effort.
I'd love to get into it.
Yeah, it's like also like yeah.
Told me that that her uncle was one of the founders of vaudeville. Grandma's 90, so I feel like timing wise, it probably could work. And she's from the Boston.
I love that you're fact checking your grandmother, by the way. Just it's plausible.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, I believe it. Wow. That's on the podcast for sure.
Thank you, David. It's the slight technical difficulties, but we're figuring it out. Thank you for hanging with us here while we go through this.
I thought I shook it off though with an attitude, but
No.
might have brought it in the house.
Attitude's everything. Frankly, this is something that we've been trying to sort out for a while. In fact, have you met Steven Lee?
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, so he said a friend named Grant, who's super cool. In fact, he played tennis with him not too long ago. And so we're gonna add like Spain, okay, and then Siani, and 52, and yeah, so he's been on the radio for like 20 years. And so his friend Grant is like the whole audience. So he's been up to Hawaii, I think, yesterday or so.
Okay, so he's got homework.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but he'll like it.
Yeah, and I told Peter, I was like, Peter, it shouldn't be that complicated. He's like, you know what we're trying to do? Like, we're staying live, we're recording, it's getting saved, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
There you go. All right, that's impressive.
Nice. On the fly.
I feel like if there was some Mission Impossible thing that had to happen with like 20 seconds left, I'm just a cheerleader, a supporter. You got this, but important role.
You're hacking.
I did not read the time.
All right. We'll just go live here?
Yeah, we're going to go. Actually, you know what? I can actually probably. Yeah, let's get a go live. I'm going to go set the camera.
Just kick this thing off.
Yeah, let's kick this thing off. All right.
This one?
We are live in 3, 2, 1.
I love the double combo there. Love the drama. All right, welcome everybody to the 106th episode of Silicon Zombies, where you will find the best brains from the Bay to beyond. We connect live with brilliant thinkers, innovators, dignitaries, and all sorts of wonderful professionals to help you get the right information in the right context to get to the next level. It's Tuesday, April 4th, and we're super jazzed to have Maria Laws with us, as well as Mr. Peter.
Hello.
I guess
We're taking the mics.
and actually, you know, we're filming from our new place in Menlo Park, so super excited for that.
Do you
as
want to go on
well.
a tour?
I'm just
kidding.
Do it.
Also want to do a quick thank you to our sponsors. We've got Premier Negocios. In fact, we have Arturo, who's a new father as of a couple days ago. So Hey, there we go.
Thank you.
So congratulations, Arturo, on your beautiful baby girl. And so if you're looking for any kind of experts that are building product, so be it web or mobile, check out primeronegocios.com. We'll have the link in the footnotes. And excuse me, that's Nicodex. Primero Negocios is for local customers. So if you need digital marketing pros, that's your team. So super glad to have everybody here. And let's go ahead and get things kicked off with Arturo. If you want to share a little bit about what you guys are building with Nicodex. Arturo, you have the floor.
Thank you, Nick. Again, very excited. This first week has been really rough, not sleeping because of the newborn. But yeah, we are doing a lot of work helping US companies who want to grow their software development teams. Specifically, we've been working a lot with Californian companies, with Utah companies, and Oregon companies who wants to take advantage of the same time zone, similar culture, and best prices that we can have with Mexican talent. So if you're looking to grow your business and you're trying to grow your software development team, we're even working with AI. With all the prompt engineering thing and everything that's going on right now, we have been working with that a lot. So just give us a shot. Look us up nicodex.com and we'll be happy to have a conversation.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Peter.
I'm just put you on mute, off mute.
Okay, perfect. There we go. We're figuring this thing out as we go. You'd think after 106 shows we'd have our shit together, but that's okay. We're having fun along here. So super jazzed to have Maria on the show today.
Hi.
We're going to be doing a deeper dive with Maria a little bit later in her incredible background as a teacher and a community builder. But today we're going to be kind of more community oriented. We've got about 6 or 7 folks here, and we kind of have some interesting conversations around trends and shout outs and maybe some technical help that folks need as well. But before we dive into that, Maria, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. So nice to see you. And what a pleasure to sit beside these two. I told them they are a comedy routine. I'm just here to support. But really, my background is primarily in education. Over 20 years teaching high school science and math. And then another 5 years at UC Berkeley teaching STEM majors, getting an ed minor. So sort of teachers in progress. And I've also done quite a few interesting projects with SF MoMA, Genentech, Lockheed Martin, UC Berkeley and Stanford, getting to do things from everything from modern art, contemporary dance, science from paleobiology to microfluidic chips. It's really an amazing life to be a lifelong learner. And my students and I have been really into that. Now, this past year, I've been at Ahura AI, an ed tech firm focusing on how AI is going to disrupt and amplify, hopefully, some of the best parts of learning. And so that's how I landed with these two over here, having some really amazing, creative, and inspiring conversations. Glad to be doing that with you too.
Awesome, thank you so much, Maria. We had a call this morning. It was my first call today, and it got me charged up and excited. In fact, we were saying we wish we had recorded the calls. It was just so dynamic, and fascinating. But I'm sure we'll get into more of that. Let's start with some of our guests here. So Jessica, if you wanna kick us off here.
Oh, let's add her to this.
Hi, everyone. I love what you're working on. That sounds amazing. Can you hear me okay? Nice.
Loud and clear.
Nice. My name is Jessica. I'm the founder of Travel, the home of AI travel startup. So we're in fundraising mode right now. If anyone wants to get involved, we plan to use a lot of a pretty awesome hand curated tech stack that'll enable normal travel as well as volunteering, learning, digital nomad trips, and more, all with travel. So it's going to be a global startup, but it's going to feel really fresh like the moment we launch. So yeah, we're still looking for investors to kick off the platform.
Fantastic. And if folks want to learn more, what website can they go to, or how can they check that out?
Oh yeah, that's great. You can go to travel.one or my LinkedIn profile, which is Jessica Breed at LinkedIn.
Fantastic.
But the website is travel.one. Sorry.
Oh, can you want to spell that for us for the audience here?
Yeah. TREVL.one. And that's just our page where if you want to get on our interest list, and know all about the launch updates. We're live with that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jessica. And great to see you last night. We were just downtown Palo Alto and got to see Dan Kotke, one of the super early guys at Apple Computer, and Keith Koo as well. They gave a wonderful talk at La Marca.
Yeah,
shout out to
that talk was amazing last night, right?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, we're gonna get into a little bit about that, like maybe favorite nuggets of wisdom or good stories that you heard from Dan and Keith. But before we jump into that, Johnny Maximin of Pipe Parker, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, yeah, great to be here. It's interesting to be in the zombie land of Silicon Zombie, especially considering my favorite latte and coffee in the world, everywhere I've ever traveled, is called a Golden Zombie, and it's from a place called Zombie Runner in Palo Alto on California Avenue. So if you haven't tried it, it's probably got one of the healthiest coffee drinks with ginger and turmeric that is just phenomenal.
And if you mention Pipe Parker, you get 10% off every drink.
Yeah, I mean, I still get these loyalty points. I'll just show up and they're like, hey, you just redeemed, like half of whatever it is for the latte. But yeah, hopefully we'll get that.
Speaking of food kickbacks, isn't there an Ike's sandwich that's named after you, Johnny?
Yeah, number 43, called Giancarlo, my son. I've known Ike for a while, helped with him a while back, and we created a sandwich for myself. We actually created 3, but only one was accepted since the first 2 were too similar to other Ike loyalists.
Fantastic. What's in the sandwich, out of curiosity?
It's got turkey, pesto, avocado, cucumber, tomato, and a dirty sauce, which is this garlic aioli spread on a par-baked bread. So they make it fresh when you get there.
Oh my gosh.
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Oh, little cream cheese. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Johnny. And just real quick for the audience, what are you building and how can folks learn more?
Yeah. I was like, should I pepper that in now or wait? Yeah, we're keeping on the sandwich verbiage.
Food first.
Okay. Yeah, let me spread it on here. So we're building an AI system on computer vision to help parking. And so what we found is the average facility saves about 64 football fields of paper waste a month that we've been able to apply our technology to. And we're able to do that with really cutting edge being the pun in there, accuracy. So that way, every car that goes in and out, we treat it and create it like a credit card. So that way, it doesn't require any new hardware in this world, doesn't require any new waste, but rather we're kind of this perfect asset management class of technology. So 1 box and 2 cameras we created out of our manufacturing facility here in Redwood City, and it can light up for any hospital, hotel, or any mixed-use building, or any place that needs a car to rest.
Yeah, you guys just recently became cash flow positive, if I'm not mistaken. So congratulations.
Almost. Yeah. Well, we'll hold the gong for a little bit longer.
That's right. DG, you're next. Kick us off here.
Hey guys, so I'm on this show for the first time, so go easy on me, okay? Devesh Ginodia, I think I've known Nick for probably, how long has it been? Like 7, 8 years, 10 years? Yeah, so it's been a decade. But I work with a company called EPAM. It's one of the fastest growing organizations publicly traded on NYSE. I lead their data and analytics practice. And the coolest product that I've been working on right now is natural language driven analytics. So gone are the days when business would ask for a report or data, and then you had to spend like 3 months looking for the data and coming up with that information. Now all of that could be translated into seconds or minutes. I remember when I did this thing for a large financial services organization with the red logo. It took me 3 years. It took me 3 years to build an enterprise profitability dashboard, and now it could be done in minutes. So that's something I'm working on right now.
Wow. And Devesh, by the way, is one of the most connected folks I know. He graciously had connected us to some very senior folks at Wells years ago. And it turns out we were a little bit too early to capitalize on that relationship, but it's very helpful to have those kind of people that help build the bridge. So, in fact, that's one of the things that we like to do here as well. So, if there are any specific introductions that we could make for anybody that's listening, please feel free to reach out. It's just to kind of to get us kicked off for the show. Maria, like, tell us a little bit more about the dynamic. You said you were a teacher for a long time, then you transitioned into technology. There must have been some remarkable lessons that you learned from teaching that you can apply. In fact, you were telling me about some of those this morning. Can we walk down that for a second?
You know, it's been such, actually, just to take it back a step, moving from something that I have been feeling very confident about, had many degrees in, lots of experiences, into a place that's brand new. I have often felt like I am speaking another language, and my job is to quickly just search for new terms on my phone. So for me, my first thing has been as a learner, like, oh, this is what this feels like when you're not the expert in the room. And it's definitely going to lead into the discomfort, right? But one of the best things about working in the business world is I've been so impressed with what kinds of learners, particularly in tech world, right, in innovation land, that the curiosity and the willingness and ability to ask for support or just for outside ideas, just to add to what you already have. And that sort of sense of advocating as a learner for, hey, what are you seeing from a different perspective than I'm seeing? So for example, coming into my company, I'm also, in addition to doing stuff on product development about how to make this really learner-centered experience, what kind of nudges can we give, what does the science learning tell us that learners need if they're learning online alone? But the other part that I didn't know is that I've become part of the machine learning team, where I help them sort of actually collect data, analyze the data, and work from there. And so the idea of all these transferable skills, to really be leaning into naming what your transferable skills are, the things that come with you no matter what the topic, no matter what the time frame, that you can apply in a creative or innovative way, has been really affirming and very powerful experience that even now, I do work on 2 different projects at my high school just as a volunteer. I'm working with a Stanford project, a research project in leadership, and then some AI work with students trying to build that pipeline. And it's amazing how transferable it is to tell them the things they're already doing that could make their way into other spaces beyond a classroom, beyond a college resume. And that's been very exciting to get to do.
So question, like, how do you, I'm imagining like it takes a few years of college and of university to start doing machine learning. How do you approach that subject with like a high school kid?
Well, you don't start with that first, right? So, and you probably all know this as well, like one of the biggest things that seems to stop people in STEM. So I'll just give you my background. I was a music major before I was a science major, and I do have a professional dance background, right? I've traveled and performed in more than a few countries doing a particular kind of dance. And I came to science because it was a challenge. I like challenges. I'll be honest, I'm kind of competitive. I wanted to do a thing. And also, it didn't hurt that my mother was a trained chemist. So what that means is, and my mother is, from a different generation. I looked up how many women from her time frame have chemistry degrees, and it's less than 3%. So she's already sort of in a niche space, and she brought that into the house, right? Like, I'm sure she was whispering in my ear more than a few times, please keep that as a hobby and move into something where you will live with us later. I know there's a different time now. You can make a living in ways that she couldn't see. But this idea being that before you teach machine learning, you have to think about how do you prep kids to see themselves in all the roles that they don't even know about yet. Those boxes get real small, real quick. And students check out and go, oh, no, that's not for me. I don't like it, or B, I know I'm not good at that. I'm not good at whatever. So building up that muscle of engage and persist, be curious. Who knows what you're good at? Let's go find out. Okay, that's a great try. Like the language around mindset. I know that may sound kind of cheesy, and of course there are hard skills to learn, but you can learn them, particularly if you are the kind of mindset, which I really got from my mother sort of showing it, and then being an athlete myself with the professional dance life, you fall down literally, and you need to get up like at that moment and just like get back to it. Like, how do you bring that to the room where you just remind them that whatever the challenges are, that's where we are right now, that's expected, and let's keep moving. Let's move to the next phase.
Right.
So yeah, and then of course, as always, you know, the things that we all know that you do, whether you're working with someone at work as their mentor, a new hire, whether you're working with a high school or a college student, or even for me working with adults as well, you think about the back end scope and sequence.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't give them the entire like 80-page handbook on how to do machine learning, or you don't tell them to go on YouTube and watch the entire 12-hour course. Okay, like that's a very rare person that's going to be like in it for that. You break it up into navigable chunks and you work from there. You build from there.
You mentioned like both are needed, the hard skills and the soft skills. Like obviously the hard skills are important too, but if the student is not in a mindset to be open to learning the hard skills, then that's kind of like a prerequisite. So you mentioned the ability to be able to ask for help is important. Do you think that's specific to the Silicon Valley, or is that kind of everywhere? Or
I feel like it's in innovative spaces, but
I have
maybe,
an opinion on this.
yeah. Yeah, I want to hear it though, because you know I'm coming from the outside, and I do work with other adults in other industries. I develop kind of other content for other folks as a contractor. I've worked with PhDs to kind of help some of the professional development there around education, and I also work with actual teachers on the regular. But there's something special about working with people, particularly in this sort of tech engineering space where innovation moves so fast. You can't wait till it's perfect before you move to the next step. You got to give it a try. It's probably not going to work this time, but it gets you closer to the next. Like I do feel like the only way you move at the speed you need to for the work that we're all doing, even on this call, the only way that you stay ahead of the curve or even keep up with the curve is to engage, embrace the people around you that may have something that you might have missed or could at least enhance where you already were. So to me, it feels special here, but I don't know how you're feeling about that.
What do you think?
So I don't know if you remember this, but when we were at 360, we had
a space,
old co-working space where we met.
Yeah,
actually, we met this gentleman who was talking about who was there giving a talk, trying to advertise Portugal as the destination for the next Silicon Valley, and he mentioned that a Silicon Valley copycat has to have three things. One, a university where companies can pull bright minds from.
Yeah.
Two, it has to have a culture of failure, a culture of like acceptance of failure. And three, it has to have, I forgot what the third one was, but really what stuck out to me was culture of failure.
Yeah.
And I compare this a lot actually to the startup community in China.
Okay.
In Germany.
Probably Germany.
In Germany. I mean, sure, I've just been to China more often.
Sure.
So that's where I'm coming from. And I heard from like talking to my relatives and my dad and from a lot of places where the consensus is like Chinese companies are really good at taking things from like 1 to 1,000, but they're not really good at taking things from 0 to 1.
Yeah.
And it kind of clicked recently that the 0 to 1 is really hard because it takes a lot of failure, it takes a lot of trial and error, it takes a lot of imagination, it takes a lot of like really just fearlessness of saying like, hey, I see an opportunity here, I'm going to try to do this, and I'm going to adjust or pivot along the way.
Right.
Whereas, and in a lot of other countries, I don't know if it has to do with them being a collectivist culture more or an individualistic culture less, but there's just a lot of resistance to change on that front.
Or maybe getting in trouble. Like if you do, for example, we had Dr. Aka on just last week, and Musa was sharing a little bit about the startup culture in West Africa, and a lot of times it's the mindset is you don't want to try new things because you might get punished for it. And I think from an innovation standpoint, that's something that entrepreneurs are really pretty open to. Devesh, what have you found in India? Is the startup mindset one that is prevalent? Help us understand.
There's actually like definitely the fragmentation is there, right? But I think what I'm observing in India is the government bodies have started to take charge in organizing and breaking the silos and breaking the fragments a little bit, right? Or bringing the fragments together into a unified approach. There are a number of organizations that have come up, started to help from venture capitalism perspective. They've created seed funding all the way to like Series A, Series B, Series C financing rounds. There are accelerators that have been created to start from like idea all the way to product market fit. And then on the other side, they're also creating demand within the government bodies. So to improve and innovate from the inside, and they're inviting all these startups to actually try it out, right? So that has created a very productive environment in India. But I would still say the lack of resources in terms of the funding that is available to them is still limited, and that's why I'm taking a lot of FDIs out of Silicon Valley and connecting the dots. People who are interested in investing in bright minds, people who are persistent and resilient, and they'll get shit done no matter what, and who want to invest in those kind of behaviors. Those are the kind of dots that I'm connecting right now.
Dinesh, don't you think that's a little bit of a cop out, saying we don't have enough money or investors, because India is one of the largest economies in the globe?
Well, I think so, but in a number of ways. Like, think about it, right? So when people start investing in a startup, they're investing their own time and energy and resources, and they got to sustain a particular duration. And not everyone has the amount of resources to sustain that time frame while they're developing a product until they can start becoming cash flow rich or cash flow positive. And when you have an investment, you are not really trying to struggle in the wrong areas. Let me just put it that way. If you've got a bright idea and you believe that you can create a product, you have the skill sets and resiliency to create a product that will work in the marketplace, then all you need to do is spend time on building the product and bringing it to the market and collect customer feedback and seeing how can you address that market a little bit better instead of just waiting around for funding or not investing time or looking for jobs that you don't really are interested in doing just to earn a livelihood. That's what I meant. But in another way, you could look at it as a cop out for sure.
Gotcha. And Arturo, tell us a little bit about the startup ecosystem and the state of innovation in Mexico.
I think there are several. As there's like the Silicon Valley in the United States, there's the Silicon Valley in Mexico that it was supposed to be Guadalajara. I don't know if you've heard of it. So Guadalajara is a really big tech ecosystem in Mexico. Obviously, Mexico City is another one, and Monterrey is the other one that is growing a lot. Specifically, us in Hermosillo are trying to grow that with the companion of the family office that we've talked about. But I think that as in India, the people or students or people who are trying to create new things are often discouraged to do it because they don't have the fundings to do it. And there's not a lot of like angel investors and a lot of seed investors in the beginning who can go with those kind of ideas at the beginning, and they just try to, I don't know, start earning money, so they just go ahead and find a job where they can pay their bills and everything. But I think there's people who are like putting a lot of effort into growing the ecosystem. I think it's just a matter of time and finding the right people so the ecosystem can really grow in the terms that we really want it to go.
Yeah, that's well put. I mean, especially if you consider like the very early stages, finding the right co-founder is so crucial. I know that Y Combinator is having a lot of success in helping folks find the right co-founder, and maybe even like unique channels like TikTok. Like maybe are folks finding new information or new new teams on TikTok? I mean,
No. TikTok is at the end of the day still a.
Thank you for the honesty.
I mean, maybe you know what? I don't know. I don't know if someone has found their CTO on TikTok. It is a. Yeah, what are they at? 150 million users and growing, maybe.
Yeah.
So maybe someone has, and we don't know it yet. But at least, so I mean, I can tell you the highlights on a lot of the various communities. Like, for example, Startup TikTok right now is talking about how a lot of roles in companies are not needed. For example, the ongoing joke,
middle management.
well, the ongoing joke on the most like tech talk, Silicon Valley TikTok and startup TikTok is like, what does a consultant do?
Right.
or like a project manager is basically an adult babysitter. That's another talking point.
And also take them out of the equation, then you see real quickly what they do. You know,
Right.
or don't. Right?
Exactly. I think that's well said.
Yeah, everyone thinks they don't need a PM until they don't have one.
Yeah, there's a reason why that job became a job.
Yeah.
You know, you could say the same thing about parents, and until you take them out of the equation and you find out exactly where you land or where you sit. Right?
That's actually a really good point. You can say the same thing about parents until you don't have one.
Right. Yeah, speaking of TikTok, so I have a TikTok joke. So the CEO of TikTok is in front of a congressional hearing, and he says, "Mr. Senator, we do not spy on Americans. Also, your wife says you got to pick up a gallon of milk." So
I feel like you need intro music just for the joke moment. I don't feel like we had a minute to really get
Sorry, Nick,
transition into it.
is this joke going to connect to my Wi-Fi?
it's
Yes or no?
it's live.
Yes or no?
It doesn't connect anywhere.
No, it's perfect, but I feel like we need like a little moment.
Yes or no
you know,
questions.
like-
I'm reclaiming my time.
See, that was one of the trending things as well that you shared recently. Right?
Yeah.
So and then Johnny, let's get your feedback here. I know you're plugged into the startup community. You help a lot of different founders as well. So what are you finding from an innovation perspective? Where are things pivoting? Where changing? Where are they changing? And how can we grow from here?
Oh man, I mean, it's so hard to answer these types of questions without putting your own internal bias. So let me interject my own internal bias. So I'd say from everything that I've seen, it's putting a lot of feature freezes, being really more realistic currently, and honing in on what it is that makes your value tick, and being more pressure sensitive. If it wasn't already before, more pressure sensitive to what you can really provide value into, and making sure you can start to kind of mine that. And that's not to trigger your cryptocurrency interest, but rather, really trigger what was happening in Silicon Valley, right? The gold rush over here. And I think, if you really look into what you can kind of do with understanding what you can really give right now versus what you can give in realistic product sprints, you can really help as a technologist in the world to deliver something that's real and not vaporware. So out of everyone, what they're trying to provide is more into the lines of what can you do with your current team, not a future team? What can you give? And then, finding a product market fit more quickly. But that's kind of been the core of Silicon Valley. So I feel like it's just more sensitive into this area. And I think if you've got a product that can deliver something that can work off of cash flow with clients, most clients are really sensitive to increased revenue. It doesn't matter where they are, right? We've got clients from healthcare. We've got clients with very secure buildings and clients in hospitality experiences. And all of them are saying the same thing: increase revenue, be the CFO's best friend. And then if you can kind of harbinge really good quality in those areas, I think then you can kind of find yourself a good niche to really just dig deep, right? Don't dig wide, dig deep into providing a good expertise.
I like that.
I mean, finding a niching is always like a solid strategy, whether it's for marketing or whether it's just building, like crafting a.
It's a stronger narrative.
Yeah,
because then you can connect. Like I remember a few years ago when we were scaling Willow, I was talking to 5 to 10 founders a day, 6 to 7 days a week, and at the end of our call, I would always say, like, how can I help you? Like, who's the ideal target customer? And so, oh, we can work with anybody, and it's just it waters down the message. It makes it difficult for people to figure out who exactly they can connect you with. Is that similar?
Yeah, I'm thinking of this because I know for our company, what we're creating isn't intended for a niche. We're trying to take over the planet with this thing. I'm just going to be honest. Like we're looking at in the best way. It's AI for good, all the things, but we really are seeing applications across. So I know the goal is to find that test case and then build out from there. But the other part to it is thinking about, especially with emerging technologies like AI or anything else related to Gen I or what have you, you do have to sort of, teach your folks what it's not that you're just going to say, here's our value. You actually have to do quite a bit of context building around what this actually is. Like it feels like in the past 2 months with the chat box things happening, more people have more of an understanding about exactly what Gen AI can do because they're playing with it themselves. But this past year before that, there was just a lot of teaching and thinking about these calls in that way before you could even get to the point where you could share your value, because it was so disconnected from where they were in terms of understanding the basis of the technology. It was hard to make the connection. I'm not saying that was across the board, but it was something that we were having a lot of conversations around. How do you prepare people, whether emotionally or cognitively, to like understand the value that you're bringing before you actually craft that message?
That's actually a really interesting thing, because when before Intel, I was already Ribbon, where and I essentially was teaching people, teaching its users basics in online marketing. And something I would tell them is that your like their involvement on stuff like TikTok and in Shorts, that's all like purely marketing purposes. But if you really want to get people to trust you, then they have to learn from you. And like I would tell them that creating using YouTube and creating use that as a way to like teach people. And whatever it is that you're teaching them will like push the algorithm, whatever platform they're using, will push them to get more of like-minded people. Therefore, you're essentially using the algorithm itself to help create a niche that you didn't know you needed.
That's long tail. Like that can take a while.
Yeah.
And for Ahura, for example, like when the average contract value is, it's a that can make sense, and I think it does. But what about for like a consumer product where it's more transactional, where maybe
you want to give me an example? I will do this real quick. I'm so good at this. Give me a consumer product, and I will tell you how to make one. Like do what I just said.
Sure. So we can say like maybe like
Legos. Sure. Okay. So with Legos, you can have a channel that with all of this, I always tell people make long form content first, and then with long form content, like slice it and dice it into short form. Sure. That gives you 50% of a short form video platform strategy. 50%. So when you have with your long form, you can. Can I finish? Thank you.
So excited! I'm gonna pull out the window. He's so excited to tell you.
You could create a whole channel about like building a Lego piece of instructions, following the instructions. Because there's 2 ways to play with Lego, right? You can follow the instructions, and you cannot follow the instructions, right? So you can have a whole channel of you following the instructions and doing an ASMR thing, or like
Lego challenge where you literally pull out a card and then you got 20 minutes
exactly.
to make it. Maybe people
you could even you could live stream.
Yeah, you could then share photos of what they did.
You can live stream your own build, right? That's one. Or you could just say like, hey, I bought this Lego popcorn for the next thing that's not popping. Yeah. Right? That's the second one. Okay. And then all of that is a tutorial, is a lesson. like that's long form. That's 10-minute videos on YouTube, and then you could speed it up, you could time lapse it, and that 10 minutes suddenly becomes 30 seconds to be put on whatever channel, TikTok, Reels, Shorts, whatever. Or you can create like you could always do part 1, part 2, part 3, like all of the above. 10 1-minute segments to be done to
So
go
let's-
on TikTok.
I love that you say that. Let's start it back to education.
I was thinking about something about this. You know, one of the things. So I also have a science degree, but I have an art degree as well, and visual art, and how to teach visual art. Because my drawings are not anything you will see anywhere of the channels that we are now discussing. But this idea of when I'm with artist friends, what we talk about is this idea of what is learning, what makes learning memorable. Like, what's the memory you're making, so that when someone is thinking of, again, this Lego challenge, they're remembering embedded in that moment of how silly it was, they made whatever, a turnip on the Hogwarts, you know, whatever. Or that, you know, again, sort of like they each had a cake challenge, they all did a cake with the same direction, they all came out wrong, or different, that kind of thing. You're building up memory, and when you have a learning memory, it has many aspects to it beyond just what you learned, how to make something interesting. Now you've got a trusted teacher who, when he speaks again on his channel, you're going to be watching. So you've now built a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
You now have got this community, as you were just talking about. And now you're starting to think about whether you meant to or not. You're thinking about some other aspects of the Legos, like why they picked this. You do some transdisciplinary research, like who actually came up with these things? I get the primary colors, but no other shapes. Really, we got to go with squares. Anything else we can do with this? How can we morph it? Like, there's a lot of different layers of making a memory that's related to learning. Because right now, all of you have a memory right now from when you were young, a learning memory, and you don't know why it's still there. Mine is, for whatever reason, in kindergarten, our class was on stage and we were churning butter. I don't know why. I'm not sure what was happening there. It is such an exciting memory even now. And so I unpacked for myself, why did that stay with me? What were the things that made that live well beyond its, you know, shelf life, no pun intended, in my mind now? So that memory of learning is what you are really doing. And you're also building trust with your audience. You're showing some personality. Like, there's some things there. I'm ready for us to start our YouTube channel, not necessarily with Legos, but maybe right after this. So.
I love that there was such a deep level of reflection. Like, what does Socrates say? The unexamined life is not worth living. So, but you're a profound thinker. I mean, you're part of your career has been helping people think about themselves in the process of learning.
So after our call this morning, which, can I just say, this is the best way to wake up. A phone call with anyone on this little couch here is going to get you going for weeks. Like, even if the rest of the day is crabby and grumpy, it won't be with these two. But there were two things that I was thinking about when we ended our call. And one of them is that when I first got to Ahura, they asked me to create some content around the science of learning. Like, from all of my career and stuff like this, like, what would it be that if you had a handbook, what would it contain about how to be the best student ever? Whether it's in school or not, right? And what was interesting is I took some time to compile this. It's going to be helping with our product development team as well, and just for us in our language about how we talk to folks out in the world about what we're trying to do. And it was interesting because they came up, kind of like organized itself into like 6 modules, I guess you'd say, but only one of them was about how to study. All the others were the things you do before you sit down to do a thing. And the most important one came after, and that's that reflection part where you try to take whatever it is that you learned and make it fit into a broader scheme or a broader purpose, if that makes sense. Like, you know, the Lego thing is not about the Legos. No one's making a career, or maybe you could now, I don't know, on the Legos.
Challenge accepted.
But there was something else that you constructed besides this thing. So putting it to purpose, and that's what you and I were talking about this morning, about when I look back at even things that were hard, or I don't really think it was probably worth my time in terms of outcome or money spent, there are lessons to be learned that fit into a broader framework that I can take with me. So that was the first thing. The second thing I thought of when you and I were talking, because you asked me a question, you asked me something about how everything we've been talking about works in my relationship with like a direct supervisor, as opposed to me being a teacher telling someone, like, how does this translate the lessons learned here? And one of the things I said to you is that part of reflecting is naming things. Like, not like I did a thing, I had an experience, but you start to use some more formal language around it, which makes it something you can talk to others about more. And it also kind of helps you ask for it if you want more of it. So we were talking about feedback stuff, and I was mentioning that my direct supervisor, one of our co-founders, is so excellent about saying, hey, I'm giving you this thing to do. I know you already have a task list of many other things to do, but the reason why I'm giving it to you is it's going to be a chance for you to develop this particular thing. And by elevating it, by naming it, it changed my relationship to, otherwise it's going to be a thing on my list. There was a lot of things on the list.
Yeah.
But the way that he framed it, he made it part of a narrative that's bigger than the moment, bigger than the product, and it's bigger than my role in the company. It's about myself, my life, my contribution overall.
Impact.
So that reflective place is what helps people engage and persist through machine learning when it's hard, that 12-hour course on YouTube, right? Like when you're connected to both, you're having some sort of novelty experience, which is fun, or you're having a connection to purpose, hopefully you have both, that helps you engage and persist through challenges well beyond what folks would predict you would do.
True. Like there are most college courses I've taken that were science-based. I used to be a bio major. It was really, really hard, but there were a few professors where I could listen to them talk about anything.
Yeah.
And it's just because they have such an interesting relationship with the subject matter, and like the way they talk about it is incredibly engaging.
It's personal. It's not a tech, it's a personal experience, and it's a memory experience, right? They're bringing all that with them. I will say one of the things that I always think about from our phone call this morning about how the people that I'm working for and with are helping me to see that everything we do is to push not only us forward, but me personally forward. It's really quite powerful.
At the same time, like humanity and personally. They're probably connected, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that's true of every job, right? Like you gain skills, but to name it so formally really just elevates every conversation about it. It just changes the energy, the dynamic differently. And I will say that with my high school students in particular, I think that college students, not quite as much. The content was so engaging, and they were already like, these are top 10%, already to even get into the program. So, they were already there with skill set. This was really about just helping them like fly. But for high school students, you see a whole range of sort of engagement, maturity level, and skill set at that point. And it was just really something interesting about taking the language less in a linear fashion, like this isn't about the skill, but we're trying to do something bigger here. Like for you, let's explore all the things you're good at. Like using this sort of like Tony Robbins kind of language may sound cheesy, but it drew out a different vibe. It created a different space.
And I know you've been on both sides of that coin, because you were a teacher on a Saturday when middle schoolers showed up, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Like, what was the unlock that you figured out to connect and make them excited about learning?
So I've had two experiences like this that Nick is talking about. One is before the pandemic, I was sort of interested in sort of storytelling, which I know is a thing we all talk about in this area of business in general, because it is critical. And so I created this, I'm not good at titles or anything, so this is not the most exciting, but I called it the Storytelling Project. I'm sorry, I'm not a marketer. I need a little bit more. I just went with linear, this is what it is. But I didn't really have like an idea of what I wanted to do with it. I had just gotten this degree in art, and I'm like, I need to put this to work. Since I'm not teaching a class on art, how do I engage students in like artistic thinking and practices that's really about creativity that you can apply anywhere? And so they're super busy. They don't have time for lunch. They got boyfriends and clubs and all kinds of stuff and homework they didn't do that's due after lunch. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to come to school on Saturdays for 2 hours. I'm going to tell them the room's open. I'll invite like 20 kids. We'll see who shows up, and maybe they'll be friends. And so that's what happened. So for literally an entire year, every Saturday from 12 to 2, can you believe this? High school students coming to school for something that's not graded, nor is it, there's no sports or a competition. And every time it was something novel, something special. We knew this wasn't a class, but they were engaged because they came. So by showing up, we already had some buy-in. And then every time I brought something weird, different, new that they hadn't seen before, or that would never make it into a classroom in terms of art or questions. And then I engaged them as partners because I didn't know what I was doing either. So it was very hard for me to be bossing people around. And so when you leave space for others to take the lead, it's vacuum. Somebody's got to. right? So somebody does, and it's
Yeah.
often an unlikely person in comparison to the classroom space where everybody already knows who's supposed to be
Yeah.
filling that space, whether it be
I
the teacher.
appreciate the humility, but you obviously didn't know what you're
It
doing.
was
You
so-
didn't get
can I
high
just
schoolers
say,
coming out of bed.
It was kind of magical. Don't laugh at me. That's not a word I would normally use, but it was like it. So the first year we did it, I came up with this idea. I directed the first one because nobody knew what we were doing, so I figured one was the gotta try. I'll step up to the leadership role, and we did this project where I asked them to interview an elder, but not about their history, but through music. So music of their childhood, music that's memorable, like memorable moment music of church and school, like that kind of thing. And then they could build a project any way they want to tell that story that their family told them. And the two things they told me is that by asking through music, people said more than if you just said, tell me something hard or tell me about this horrible time. The other thing that they did is if you looked at the projects, one kid created like an algorithm and did a whole like web app where you clicked on things and then the things came up. Another student created like digital art. Another student did a dance. Like it was all over the place and amazing. One kid learned what a mixtape is. So any of you in here that is aware of what a mixtape is, he said, yeah, my parents met because my dad gave my mom something called they asked in their home language, like, what was that called? A mixtape? And every parent and every teacher in the room was like, oh,
That's
yeah,
amazing.
we know mixtapes.
Was there a common thread or narrative between the classes?
Absolutely. So I'll just share this. So the next year I did a different storytelling project where I just opened up to the kids and I brought things and we kind of workshopped some ideas and we did maps of the future. So maps of their future. And again, the way they went from linear to three-dimensional to something digital to something literally that was like a mural on the wall. I got funding from a local group called Voice of Witness, which is sort of a storytelling ethnography group. And so we went on field trips to look at how scientists, cartographers, and artists view maps. And that was the point where we went from scaling, right? We went from 12 kids coming and our showcase, which we didn't tell anyone about because I thought it wasn't going to be good really, was like everybody had brought a parent. Wow. This next time there were 60 people that showed up. I do not know how. I did not make an invitation, but they came. And it just sort of grew from there. During the pandemic, we tried to keep it going. Obviously we couldn't meet and Zoom was like not satisfactory. So we tried doing postcard art where I create a postcard with a word, a color, and a question, a word, a color, a question, a color, and something else, a pattern, and send it to a kid. They don't really get mail anymore. They don't even know where to put the stamp on people. I had to do some scaffolding there. Then they would add to the postcard and send it to another person, add an answer. It was so cool.
It was like a game of telephone.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that's even better. Yeah, forget postcard art. We're gonna call it like telephone art.
The computer's pretty good at this.
Yeah, but this idea that they had an urgency to keep the group together and this wanted to hold space around novelty and something bigger than school. No offense to school, love school, but this wasn't about a graduation. This wasn't about whatever. But let me just say about the kids in the group.
Too.
One kid went to Fashion Institute, whatever the FIDM one.
Yeah.
Another 3 students went to Ivy League schools. Another student wound up doing a science project in my class that took her to the EPA, and then she got recruited by Caltech, MIT, and now she's at Stanford. Wow. And this was, and she said it's because we were working differently in the art space. And that made her think differently about the curiosities she had about science. So, I mean, wins all around. So I'm really bummed that didn't become a class, but it doesn't really get tested. So we didn't really have an in terms of value that was like financial. You know what I'm saying?
But maybe, maybe the fact that the judgment of whether or not a class should exist, the testing could be kind of similar to how like gross domestic product is really the only measure of an economical growth. When in reality, like the happiness of the society should be an important element of that growth.
I wish I could do some of the business math y'all do, which is new to me, right? Where you can sort of extrapolate out like value based on things like when I think about the number of students that went into science majors because of this storytelling project, like I feel like we could actually do some math around the value it would have in that market. But going back to your point, novelty, purpose, and centering their voices in a different way. Like I literally couldn't have been in charge because I didn't know any more what to do than they did, but I could navigate that project manager role, about helping with resources, keeping on, like checking in to make sure our goals are still our goals, that kind of thing. So.
Have you ever seen that video where, it must have been from like 20 years ago, but there's a guy dancing at a music festival by himself, and then some other guy runs up, and then a gal runs up, and they're all dancing together. It's almost like this momentum of humanity. It sounds like you kind of tapped into that, Maria.
Yeah, it was really, what was also cool is, again, this idea that when you start these things where I would call it, there's a book that talks about this, I don't remember what the name of the book is right now, but he talks about how important it is for learning, whether it be in business or in school, that you play away from home, right? Like a sports reference. Like when you're just playing in the classroom, it's just a teacher and your parents. And I mean, yes, they're important, but that's a small thing. When you're in a performative space, a performance space where there's an entire room seeing that slide deck or that NVIDIA, keynote animations or these projects, they would not have been what they were if we kept them inside. We had to have an audience. Yeah. And so that what happened is, we didn't just do projects. I had them keep like a running like research notebook as they went to kind of think of ideas and all that. And so other kids would be like, what are you doing? So and so it's like, oh, it's for a thing I'm doing. And they're like, is it for a class? She's like, no, but I gotta get it done. Like you're doing work for school, but it's not a class. You're not getting a thing. But then that person would want to come. So that, so it's funny how it spread beyond just our group having a cool experience. It was moving beyond. And I see that with so many of our startup spaces as well. When I first started with you all, like in startup land, and tech world here, I didn't understand why y'all kept having all these meetings when none of you were doing the same thing. Don't laugh, but we teachers, we don't have that kind of money or time to wander. So we just, you just kind of do your thing in your room. And now I understand that sort of cross-pollination. It's not even just about funders or maybe partners or collaborators. It's really about keeping in check with the community, building maybe not in the same way, but for similar purposes of outreach and value.
I mean, I recently just started going into the office now, and I realize that I'm way more productive in the office just because I get to be around other people and we can, like, literally collaborating with another person face to face is much more effective than like any other substitute, whether it's text, phone, camera, whatever.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
100%. Because as we get like this, I mean, there needs to be psychological safety, which is an important element of Bill Campbell, who wrote the $1 trillion. Actually, it's about Bill Campbell. Eric Schmidt from Google had written it, but having trust within the group allows people to come up with crazy ideas that allow for Maria, what you mentioned, the cross-pollination. What kind of ideas? This feels like reading Rainbow.
Take a look.
Yeah, it's a look. It's a reading
Silicon Valley.
So what kind of things have you found, Peter, around new crazy ideas and bouncing off this cross-pollination of ideas with folks in the office?
One thing that we do really well at least the community department and the the TikTok marketing department in us, is that and this is really surprising coming from like a Fortune 50 company, is that when we have these brainstorming meetings, we like don't let ego dictate who should or shouldn't participate. So everyone,
right? No offense.
I know, dude. That's crazy. I'm surprised every day.
You must have a cool boss.
You met him a few times. I do. Yeah. We like. It doesn't matter if you're the managing director of the marketing team who sometimes sits in our meetings, or like if you're the head of community, or if you're just like me who is a contract employee. Everyone's ideas are valid. We throw all the ideas together. Everyone has X amount of time to argue which ideas they like, which ideas they don't, and then it's kind of like an open discussion about which one. And then eventually, once these brainstorming sessions last about 90 minutes. The goal of the 90 minutes is to whittle all the ideas that we throw onto the board, in this case, a PowerPoint, down to 10, and then we have until the end of day or end of week or whatever to pick of that 10 what is the top 3.
How do you do that? How did you do that? I feel like you're still a teacher to some degree. When you're facilitating a room in discussions, as Peter had mentioned, Like some folks are naturally going to speak more, some folks are going to speak less. How do you draw them out of your shell, out of their shell, and do you like dynamically?
Yeah, and I'm sure you have some things to say about that as well. If you want to go, I can go first. You can go first. Okay, yeah. So one of the things I've noticed is that I am not a shocker. I have no, tell me what you want to talk about. We'll do the thing.
Fortunately, you're pretty good at it.
Well, thank you. But also the bummer about that is not just that you might block someone, but the other folks that may not be willing to do that, it's a lot easier to let the rest of us go first. So it's not like everyone's complaining about the order of things, right? So both to allow space and also to raise expectations so every voice is in the room because they are twin, like they're on, twin sides of the coin, right? I start in writing space. So and I don't mean write yourself. I mean, I put out butcher paper with a question in the middle and then I time it. Like that's the second part is it's timed. So I'll do that for maybe 3 to 5 minutes where you write your answers. And then everybody looks at them and then we might actually star them or connect them or write connections around them for a learning tool. And the reason why I want to do that is if a student is emerging bilingual, this gives them a little chance to think, to read, and to agree. So if they can write a lot, they could star others, right? It allows you to see. The other thing I feel like is and this is probably true in groups for you all as well, I'm wondering, once someone says an idea and you're like, oh, that was mine, then you don't say it. But there is an absolute need to know how often things are showing up organically, right? So on the paper, because people are doing their own thing, I can see that this one idea came up 10 different times. And that's essential knowledge for me because shouldn't all get equal weight if already there's this one idea that needs more time on the floor to flesh out. So for me, this idea of switching up, it's not always talking first, maybe it's writing first, maybe. And then for me, because I have a dance background.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, well, I have a whole little protocol I can share with you. It's very common. I use it with adults too. But the other part that I find for students, like learners, like younger folks, I do it with my college and my high school students, is embodied learning. So for example, if I want to check the pulse to see what people know about DNA, I might say, right now, make a shake with your body that shows DNA. So you guys want to try it right now? What would it be? We've got an animated one. Okay, so you all just did something interesting. If I say, okay, y'all ready? 1, 2, 3, I'll get mostly this or this. And then you'll get someone who does a motion. You'll get 2 people that suddenly get up and they're doing some sort of twister game, right? Or someone else does something with their materials. So I can already do a quick check to see the most basic thing. If I had to distill down to the most basic thing about structure, that's what it is, right? But I can also see some interesting creative ways of doing things that I wouldn't have seen before. You get to learn some layers around who the learner is, like the person that immediately turns to their partner. They had 3 seconds. It's not like they had this planned ahead of time, and they immediately do a thing together.
Is that what made you such a successful dancer? Because you did things that were kind of a little bit outside of the box.
Oh, I was a dancer first, and even when I got my art degree, I never used dance in my classroom. Yeah, so I mean, everyone knows about Latin dancing now, but it started out, I guess you would say salsa, but I wouldn't call that as more Cuban. So son or timba, I also do that. I've trained on all these spaces, New York for that, Cuba, other spaces. Yeah. So I do some stuff. I do pachanga, merengue. I do a lot of things over the years, and I've taught it every nightclub in the Bay Area except for one. I'm not even kidding.
Wait, I wonder if I've ever gone to one of your classes.
So, but my point being, I never really used it because I felt kind of shy bringing that in my classroom life. Although students will find me on YouTube and be confused about who it is because there's a lot of other glitter rhinestones things going on. But that being said, then I got a chance to work with a MacArthur Genius Grant winner in tap dancing who wanted to add some Latin kind of moves or techniques into her next choreography. And so she and a partner, I went to help. And in return, I said, well, why don't we do something in my classroom? I'm working on evolution right now. Maybe we could do something with dance to learn evolution, which I know might sound like not a big thing, but she showed some moves. They showed some moves. He showed some moves. It was a whole thing. And then the idea was each student had something I had taught them about, like a theme in evolution or an idea, and they had to come up with some performance around it, 3 minutes or less. They could do it anywhere on campus. So we were running around campus like crazy people, trying to find their spot on the football field. But this idea that, again, taking it out of the classroom, they were performing. It immediately brought, well, first of all, it brought the security guards. I'll just be honest. That was the first audience.
You're doing
But
something right.
all those kids on pass that don't actually have anywhere to go, but they keep wandering to the bathroom every single class period, they showed up as well. Like, we wound up with a whole like space where even if it had been a failure and they didn't learn evolution the way I wanted, one, I knew I could fix it. And two, they learned something about doing something that isn't the norm. And I'll share this with you before I end, which is when the tap dancers came to class, I wanted them to come to the library to surprise the kids. And one of them immediately jumped up on a table. And as they were introducing themselves, just started to do some things.
Wow.
And if you could, well, that sounds cool to the kids and I, but then I have more than one adult come over and go, do you know that person? And I'm like, I'm standing right next to them and they're wearing a big visitor badge, meaning even when we're trying to lead creative spaces, we can also enact structures that are not allowing creativity. So you talking about how your team is building a space for it really struck me. That I was shocked by teachers being uncomfortable with someone who's clearly harmless tap dancing on a table. Like, you don't have anything to worry about right now. We're good. It was interesting to me that the students were feeling proud that they were doing something different. And noticing the reaction to difference, and that you need to keep your tribe with you so that you can deal with that and not let that shut you down.
Wow, that's fascinating. I really appreciate you sharing that, Maria. Thank you so much. So we're about 10 minutes past the hour, so we're gonna wrap up today. These things always go by so fast.
Right.
So grateful for both of you. Thank you so much for joining Devesh and team here. Be sure to tune in next week where we'll have more of the best brains of the Bay. Excuse me, the week after next, because we're the first and third Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. So check us out. We're at siliconzombies.com. And thank you so much for joining us. And until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Take care, everybody. That's why. You're really good at this.
Really?
Yeah.
Because you still have a really good idea about how you have a team structure. Because that is not every meeting ever I've been in up until Art Life and then this award space. Award's kind of magical, I'll be honest. I know I'm being naive and I'm sure if I'm there another year or so I might feel differently, but I don't think so. Like, they're enacting